Aloha. I'm Paul Norman. I'm the Executive Director of Neighborhood Place of Puna. And I wanted to take a few minutes today to talk a little bit about the social safety net. Um, of course, one of the reasons I want to do that is because Neighborhood Place of Puna is part of that social safety net, but also because we just finished the legislative session here in Hawaii. And this idea of a social safety net is, for many politicians, a dirty word. Um, there's something that runs against the grain of American politicians when it comes to helping people. And the United States has the worst um, social safety net of all the rich developed countries in the world. Hawaii is relatively generous, but again, compared to being in the country with the worst. So I just kind of wanted to deconstruct this a little bit. So the um, the idea of a social safety net, as you might imagine, comes from this idea of a circus performer. So this might be a high wire act or trapeze artists and so forth. And the social safety net, the net in that particular case, is there for if something goes wrong, they fall, whatever, they hit the net, they get caught in the net, instead of hitting the ground and dying or suffering a traumatic injury or an injury that would end their career as a high risk artist, as a high wire artist or whatever. And so when we think about this, first we just have to like deconstruct the metaphor a little bit and recognize that we are talking about a safety net that is put under there for for individuals who are doing something that is intrinsically dangerous, right? And we kind of leave off that they're doing intrinsically dangerous for the amusement of others, but they are doing something that is intrinsically dangerous, a high level of risk, and that making a mistake or failing in that activity can result in death or serious injury. All right, so let's just start there and recognize that, right? So that's what that's about. And so then when we talk about the social safety net, we think, oh, it's there to help people who are, you know, economically distressed or whatever, to catch them, to kind of soften the fall. And that's a great idea. Wonderful. The problem is that, first of all, the economy, especially in a rich country like this, the economy, employment, healthcare, childcare should not be so dangerous that a huge percentage of the population needs a safety net under them. So I went and I did, before I hit record, I went and looked at the statistics for two of our public schools in the district in which Neighborhood Place of Puna serves. Okay, so I looked at the specifically at elementary schools for these two. And in one of these schools, 77% of all the children in that school qualify for free lunch assistance. And in the other school, it was over 80%. So, in case you don't know, to qualify for free or reduced lunch, but I just gave you the stats for free lunch. To qualify for that, you as a family have to be receiving SNAP or TANF, or basically you have to be making around $39,000 or less for a family of four over the course of a year. And to put that in perspective, the area median income in Hawaii County is around $83,000 for a family of four. So you're already you're impoverished. Okay, if your kid or kids are getting free or reduced lunch, which is a really basic form of the social safety net, because there are other elements of it, but there's a really basic one, easy one to see. If your children are on the receiving a free lunch from in school as part of their school day, then you're impoverished, right? You are living well below the area median income, and Hawaii has quite a few. Unaffordable. Rents high, food's expensive, lots of problems, lots of challenges here. Um, and so when we look at those numbers, you know, 70% of children are found by extension by families. 70% of families should not need a social safety net under them in their day-to-day life. It should be there, but once we're talking about serving 70% of families that with school-age children in elementary school, when we're talking about that, that's something different. That is a fundamental brokenness in our society. That's not, hey, we have these people who are, in these kind of risky careers, or, they're kind of in a tenuous employment. That is a fundamental brokenness of society. That's as if you went to the circus and when you walked in, they take your ticket and they put you on the high wire over the safety net. So the entire audience is up there on the high wire over the safety net. That's what we're talking about, really. And there are a lot of reasons for this. There's a lot of reasons for this. The wealth, the disparity in the United States. Some of them are quite dark. A lot of racism. A lot of this is tied back to the United States history of slavery, and the power and the concessions that were made to slave-owning states after the Civil War. And you can see it in the language we use sometimes around the social safety net. And if you read, um, economists use a little bit more nuanced language, but if you listen to politicians talk about it, basically what they say is people are fundamentally lazy, which is totally not fault. That's not totally not true. Okay, people are not fundamentally lazy. Some people, everybody has different work ethics and so forth, but you cannot just use a blanket term like that. That's just bias, prejudice, whatever you want to call it. Um, and a lot of the people's work and the level at which they work is tied to the kind of job they have, the opportunities for growth, for prosperity, and so forth. And when also when politicians talk about it, they talk about it like, oh, well, if we have a social safety net and we give people sick days, they'll use them, right? It's like as if using sick days is a bad thing when you're sick. And the other thing is that as if uh, human beings, because that's what we're talking about, human beings are just cogs in this big economic machine, that they're all the same, and it's all about getting the most efficiency out of them, and it's not, right? As human society is about the thriving of humanity, and for me, the health and welfare of our families, our children, are a pretty good marker of how we're doing on that. And for me personally, it is really it's a question. It's a moral question. Do we, as a society, what is the way that how how we treat our families and our children tells us about ourselves as a moral society. So if we don't take care of our families and our children, to me, that is a moral shortfalling. That is a moral that does not reflect well on our society, on us as human beings, right? And for sure, uh, children specifically are the innocents here. They're the ones that we as parents and we as a society should be investing in to help. So personally, I think we need to get rid of a lot of the language around the social safety net. I mean, it's broken. There's this idea in America about volunteerism kind of filling the gap, and totally bogus. Okay, just FYI, it's this old Victorian idea, and as we saw during the Great Depression, totally fell apart. Volunteerism did not save the day during the Great Depression. During the Great Recession, which we just went through, we just saw how private donors who are supposed to be filling in the gap, private foundations just couldn't do it. They were being impacted just as much as everybody else. So it's really for us as a society to commit to helping families and children through the spending of our wealth, through our tax dollars. Really, that's what it is. What tax dollars are our wealth, a reflection of wealth. And there's a tremendous amount of wealth here. So I just bring this up because, social change, societal change, moral change is something that kind of has to rise up from the local level. It has to rise up in our local churches, our local social groups, and our local families. There has to be a change of heart to first of all recognize the problem, that it is unacceptable for over 70% of elementary school children in our area, in our district, to have to need free lunch, to have to receive free lunches in school. That's unacceptable. That's just morally unacceptable. And nationally, the statistic is, I think, around 30%, maybe it's a little bit more than 30%. That's unacceptable. Even at 30%, it's unacceptable, even though it sounds better compared to this district. So as a society, as a community, as friends, we need to be really clear that child hunger, that children in particular should have the sufficient resources to thrive. And the way we do that is by supporting families and supporting mothers. And let's just cut through all the BS about all the prejudice and BS we have around mothers and unwed mothers and mothers in poverty and all that stupidity. And let's just be honest. We need to help mothers, we need to help families, and we need to help children. And if we do that, we can create a community and a society in which every child is raised in a safe, nurturing, and loving home. If we don't, this is just going to get worse, right? Benefits, assistance for families and children are continually getting cut or harder to come by or more narrow. So we as a society, you need to decide where you are on this, where this issue touches you in your moral universe, and then commit to action. Doesn't have to be big action, but it does have to be action to help families and children. So, aloha. As y'all know, if you watch this, super committed to families and children, and Neighborhood Place of Puna is committed to ensuring that families have the resources that they need to raise children in a safe, stable, nurturing, and loving home. Aloha.